This is the Lighting Fires podcast, supported by Henley Business School.
We came up with a tool that I have used since, which was my 3-month impact review, which sounds like a very formal way of doing it, but I quite like reviews. So I've got a reminder that pops up in my phone every 3 months, and then I've got 3 questions which I ask myself, which are: what impact am I currently having, what's missing, and then what's the next 3 months look like? And I think for me that felt really important, to just be really purposeful, because I think that's what I get out of coaching, is that, like, this feels like a really purposeful conversation. How can I put tools in place that's going to help me to feel this purposeful outside of here as well?
Welcome to the Lighting Fires podcast. My name is Julie Williams and I'm a coach. I have a master's in coaching and behavioural change, over 10 years of running my own coaching practice, and 15 years in marketing leadership roles, including Accenture, where I worked with Microsoft. In my work, I gain the benefit of walking with people through their lives for a short time. So on this podcast, you'll get to hear from people experiencing key moments of change in their business and personal lives. We'll hear what lit their fires and the techniques that created significant shifts. I hope you find their story inspiring. In this interview, I meet with Annie Willmot, Deputy Chief Executive at Reading Students' Union and Director of Membership Engagement there. We explore a wide range of topics, from the idea of finding the golden thread in your career and how this can propel you forward with purpose. We discuss how it's okay to be ambitious and to negotiate the pay that you deserve, and the importance of having honest conversations. I hope you enjoy this episode and find something useful to take away. So, welcome to the Lighting Fires podcast, Annie. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Annie Willmot. I am currently working for Reading Students' Union. I'm Deputy CEO and Director of Membership Engagement, which is a bit of a mouthful as a title. I am mum to 2 boys who are incredibly energetic, married to Pete. I spend a lot of my time reading, if I can, or outside with the boys, who are like puppies and need fresh air. Yeah.
Thank you. So we started our coaching work back in 2021.
I think so, yeah.
2021, yeah. So a while ago, and we met at a shared office space, didn't we? Where we were both based at the time in Reading. So I wanted to start with asking you, what brought you to coaching in the first place?
Yeah, so I've been a big fan of coaching for a long time. When I finished university, I was doing social work and I went into a job where I was coaching unemployed young people. So I trained as a coach, specifically for that purpose of helping young people back into education, employment or training. And a lot of that was about seeing the potential in those young people and facilitating group sessions for some of that. So I think that's probably where I first started to fall in love with coaching. Then went through a bit of a phase of not having any coaching, occasionally tapping into maybe podcasts or books and thinking about what kind of questions I asked. Yeah, and then any opportunity I've had over the last couple of years to get coaching, I've seized it, and being a real advocate for anyone who wants to get coaching to say it's worth it, just the space to think and be asked questions that can help you really focus on what you're doing, yeah. Not an opportunity to pass up, I don't think.
Yeah. Oh, it's always hugely valuable. I always think everybody should have coaching, including myself. So, do you want to tell us a bit more about your backstory? Will you share?
So, it's always hard to know how far to go back in your backstory. I went to uni originally to study law. Partway through the kind of start of that course, I thought, this is not what I want to do. I remember speaking to a lot of people who weren't enjoying it either, but they said, oh, that's fine though, because I'm going to earn lots of money, and had this sort of, whoa, I can't do a job just for money. That's not enough for me. I need to find something fulfilling. So I switched to social work. Ironically, never became a social worker, then worked as a coach. Then I worked for a church doing work with children and families. Got married, had my first son, and then was working kind of building a national network and website and things for a charity that did kind of parenting and faith stuff with families. Had another son, and then from that went into, I think out of that I started writing a book. So I'd been blogging about parenthood and faith which all started after a conversation with another mum friend who had her newborn. So we both sat there with our tiny babies, and I asked her how she was doing, and she said, honestly, I'm not enjoying it, but I don't feel like I'm allowed to say that to anyone. And for me, it was just this moment of like, we should be allowed to say something is really hard, and that doesn't take away from the fact that we know it's a privilege or we love that thing. So I started writing about the messiness of parenthood. So then I'd been doing that for a while. Then this opportunity to write a book on that came up. So I wrote a book. And at that point, I started working as a funeral pastor, taking funeral services, so meeting families and then taking them through that service, writing, reading a eulogy to help people say goodbye to their families well. So I think that was an interesting period in terms of doing those things together. Out of that, worked for a local charity called Connect Reading, which is when we met, because we were in that co-working space, while still doing the funerals alongside that. Yeah, and then moved into working in students' unions, which is what I'm doing now, in a digital and comms role. So I think whenever I used to look at this, I'd think it was kind of windy road and I couldn't quite figure out how it all matched up. But I think through our coaching, actually, was when I started to piece some of those things together, because I've got a real passion for community and connection, and people being able to just have honest conversations and connect authentically with each other. And actually that goes through all of the stuff I've done, whether it's digital and comms or for funerals. So it kind of makes sense to me now that my career path is in a place where inclusion and people finding a place where they belong is really, really important. Yeah, so it feels like it makes sense now when I look back on what's brought me to where I am currently.
There's definitely a golden thread, isn't there, that's coming through there. What's the title of your book?
Cold Cups of Tea and Hiding in the Loo, which I haven't yet said that to a parent who hasn't said, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I remember that well, yeah. and it's interesting, isn't it, what you say about, it's all right to be honest about things being difficult, even when it is a privilege, because it is a privilege to be a parent. We're very fortunate, and it is really challenging at times. I remember my whole world just imploded when I had kids. I'd had a jet-setting global career, and suddenly I was pushing a pram a kind of half-mile radius of my house and not seeing anybody very often, and going to baby groups and chatting about whether other people's babies were sleeping through the night. Yeah, I mean, the conversation, the shift in things I was talking about was unbelievable. And it does kind of, it's a bit of a shock to the system, isn't it?
It is, and then there are so many expectations on what parenthood should look like, or you feel like there are. But unless we talk really honestly about that stuff, you have no idea. You just think that everyone else has it sorted and you don't.
Yeah. Everyone's this perfect parent. Yeah. Okay, so what were you hoping to get out of our coaching work? What were your aims?
I think I was trying to figure out what was next, and to figure out what was making me feel stuck, I guess. So kind of some of that, like getting unstuck. A lot of it was that, and thinking about the kind of things that I felt that, maybe were holding me back, or just processing what did I need to do to move on to the next stage in my career. I probably didn't realise that at the beginning. But some of that, what's next? What do I need to focus on? Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're interested in training as a coach, I can highly recommend the Professional Certificate in Executive Coaching, or even the Masters at Henley Business School. It is the best investment I have made in myself and my business. The course is led by research, so it has academic rigour, and the tools and techniques you learn are highly practical. You get the opportunities to practice, you build confidence. I also gained friendships for life, a community that's continued to support me. I can highly recommend it. So if you decide to take the plunge and contact Henley about the certificate programme, do mention the Lighting Fires podcast. So I remember one of the first things we did was talk about how much you'd already achieved in your life and career so far, and you put together this awesome piece of artwork on Canva, which I found really inspirational. It was something really creatively, really kind of, I don't know, something really fresh about it and appealing. What was that like for you, putting that together?
It's really good. And it's interesting that you talk about the creativeness of it, because I think that's something we touched on. And I often touch on at those points in my life where I feel a bit stuck in terms of work. Sometimes I'll have neglected the creative part of me a bit. So bringing that in while I'm processing definitely helps me tap into something more about me, I think. It was a really good exercise. We've just looked back at the picture now, and I think I can remember even just writing the word achievements on it and the word yay. I found it really hard to just even celebrate stuff, because I think I'm always so keen to learn the next thing and to complete stuff and move on to the next thing that I'm not very good at pausing to reflect and to... Well, I'm good at pausing to reflect, but I reflect to move on. I don't reflect to stop and celebrate. So it was a really good exercise, and I think I found it more difficult than you might imagine because I find those kind of things hard to do. I think because my book launched right at the beginning of the pandemic, I didn't sell it in the way that I might have expected, going out and doing talks about it. I changed jobs rather than continuing to focus on that. I think I probably didn't allow myself to really recognise what an achievement it is to have written and published a book. So it was good to stop and write that down. Yeah, actually all the things that we wrote down on that. Important to recognise all the hard work that went into those things.
And the variation of all the things that you've done as well. I find the piece around the funerals really fascinating. That ability to be with people in a very vulnerable, difficult moment of their lives and guide them through that's quite an unusual skill to have.
Yeah, I've had people ask me how did you handle doing funerals? And I think I've always felt there's something really different about holding someone else's grief compared to if it was your own. And I found that interesting reflecting on recently and actually thinking about how resilient I am as a person. I'm sure a lot of that does come from that. It's been developed through that period of taking funerals and being able to hold all of that and hear really, really sad stories repeatedly and help people through that space. Yeah, there's some amazing learning there in terms of being able to help someone with their emotion but not to take it all on you, I think. So I think I did it funerals for 2 years. I have done a few since when families have asked me, but I did 146 funerals in that time over a 2-year period, which when I added it up, when I was at the point of thinking I think I might be done with these and I added up the number, I thought, okay, no, it makes sense that I might be done, because as much as I was able to hold all of that and be resilient through it, I had reached a point, probably mostly because of COVID, I think, where I just thought, actually, emotionally, I haven't got it in me right now for this, because, and it's probably part of that, I was holding other people's grief, but actually we all had so much of our own grief during COVID as well. And it's almost like it reached my capacity, because one of the things I loved about funerals was you'd go to someone's house and you'd sit and have a cup of tea and they'd tell you all the stories about the person who died. But when COVID came, suddenly you were doing that on a phone, so you couldn't make eye contact with someone. So if they were crying on the phone and you're saying to them it's okay, you can't really show that to someone when they can't see your face to show that you really mean it. And then you'd get to a funeral, I'd not have met the people, but you'd all be wearing masks, so it's really hard just from someone's eyes to figure out who they might be. And then you'd be delivering a eulogy, which I'd written and they'd read it beforehand, to check it was the right facts and everything. But you're reading this incredibly emotional piece and hoping that it's connecting with people, but you can't see their faces. And yeah, I think I had one that was just particularly hard to read out for that reason. And I just had a moment, I think, during the funeral where I thought, I don't think I can keep doing this, because what for me was important about funerals was delivering that service in the best way possible to help people say goodbye well. And I thought, I can't tell if I'm doing that at the moment. So yeah, it felt like the right time to stop. And it was the right time in terms of other things going on as well. But
146. That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's
a lot, isn't it?
That's definitely. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the coaching then.
Yeah.
So when you look back, were there key moments of change, or something shifted, or you had a realisation? Often we call those kind of critical moments in the coaching world, and could you tell us a bit about them?
Yeah, I think there were lots of those. I think the one we were talking about, my achievements, was quite a big one, probably because that's a practice that I've put in since. So I haven't done it in such a visual way, and I think I might go away from here and do it a bit more creatively again. But I've started trying to write down the things that I've achieved and to celebrate all those things. And actually it's something I try and do with my team as well. So I think that was really impactful. I think thinking about what impact I wanted to have. I think I realised how having an impact to me is what's really important. Whatever I do, I want to know that I am having some kind of impact. So we came up with a tool that I have used since, which was my 3-month impact review, which sounds like a very formal way of doing it, but I like quite like reviews. So I've got a reminder that pops up in my phone every 3 months, and then I've got 3 questions which I ask myself, which are: what impact am I currently having, what's missing, and then what's the next 3 months look like. And I think for me that felt really important, to just be really purposeful, because I think that's what I get out of coaching, is that like this feels like a really purposeful conversation. How can I put tools in place that's going to help me to feel this purposeful outside of here as well?
Yeah, and that's then very sustainable, isn't it? You're taking that coaching forward into your life.
Yeah. And then I was thinking, the other one I think was, when we were having the coaching, I was thinking about what was next, and then moved into the place of having job interviews, and we prepped for quite a few different ones. And I think there are a few moments in that process that were really impactful for me. I think through all the conversations we had, I got to a place where I thought, I'm going to go into an interview, I'm going to present myself, and we talked through a lot about what do I want them to know about me. And I was doing interviews and thinking, actually, do you know what, I've presented me, and if they don't want me, then that's fine, that's not the space, which felt like a really different way to approach it. But then the interview for the place I'm now working, I can remember when we prepped for that, and I was thinking a lot about what that role would look like if I got it, and it would be one stepping into a senior leadership team. And I'm thinking, if I go there, I'm going to be a senior leader, so when I go to the interview, I'm going into that interview as a senior leader. But I remember we talked about what interview questions I might do, and I think you shared one that your dad had given you. Was to ask them at the end of the interview, what would you see the first 6 months of my work being, or what's the first project I'd work on? And I asked that in the interview, and there was something about that for me, imagining myself in that job, but about positioning it to them to get them thinking about what that would look like. And I think I would use that in any interview again, since that was really good.
That's really interesting, you should bring that up. I remember that moment really well, because my dad had only just passed away a few weeks before that interview. In fact, I've got a feeling that ours might have been the first coaching session I had done since he'd died. I'd taken a month off work after a really difficult time, and I've been holding myself together really well, and then this came up, and I thought, I'm going to reflect on some of the things that my dad had shared with me, because he had been director of HR at Blackwell's publishing company and booksellers, and he had actually gone on to become a coach, so it was just a bit odd that we'd ended up doing similar things. But as I talked to you about that question, it just brought so much emotion back for me, and I had to do everything I could to button all that down and compartmentalize, because I knew it wouldn't serve either you or me in that moment. But I did nearly lose at that point. And actually, it's coming up to the 3rd anniversary of his death in 2 weeks' time. So that's interesting. I don't think we've ever really talked about
I don't think we have. No, and I've thought about that a lot since, because it felt really special to me. I think we didn't talk about it at the moment, but I was aware how much you were probably holding in. I think it felt really special to me that you were willing to give me something that was his. Oh, I feel a bit emotional now. And I've thought about that a lot since. But I think that is one of the amazing things about coaching, because even when you're not saying, this is a thing I learned from this person, so much of coaching is you reflecting on what you've learned in your life from people and passing that on to others, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as coaches, we're taught to not give advice and not to pass on, but in my experience, it is the personal stories either of myself as a coach, but in my previous life of my career, in the corporate world, or other clients' anonymised stories that are so helpful for people. So that did feel like a little gift, actually. A gift from my dad and a gift to you. And it is a great question. So just thinking, just to repeat the question, it's in an interview situation, asking people what they would like you to deliver in the first kind of 3 to 6 months is really powerful, because it demonstrates that you're already seeing yourself doing the role and you're going to be really useful really quickly. Thank you for that one. That was unexpected. Are you feeling stuck and need some help moving forwards? At Lighting Fires, I work with business leaders, future leaders and their teams to ignite their full leadership potential. Whether you're a business owner or leading in an organisation, we can work together to create a programme tailored to your priorities. Throughout our coaching together, I see my clients' confidence and capabilities grow as they gain a greater understanding of how they work, learn to make quicker decisions, and develop a vision for their role and a plan on how to get there. Through the challenges and the breakthroughs, you'll have me by your side. Get in touch on LinkedIn or email me, julie@lightingfires.co.uk. So, any other moments things shifted for you or something changed?
I think there were lots of others too. I think the other one we talked about was because I was going through a bit of a negotiation on my pay at the time that we first spoke. And looking back, I've been in quite a lot of places where, I think we talked about this at the time, like I've not really been paid for the level of work I was doing. I've worked in places where my husband and I both worked somewhere at the same time. We were working at the same level and we both got promoted, but they created another level so they could put us lower down the pay scale rather than paying us for the role we were doing, which now I look back on and I did go and challenge it, but would challenge it much harder, probably by not working there anymore. But it's all learning. So yeah, and I think we talked a lot about that, having worked in places where the assumption is that you do that thing for a charity, perhaps because, you know, it's a calling and, you know, you're not doing this for the money, and actually someone else telling me that I'm not doing something for the money is not okay. But also I think that I've experienced some sexism within that, and I think in terms of people viewing that women shouldn't be ambitious, I was quite aware of that. This would have been a similar time actually, during COVID and that period where some of the friends I had at that point, I was talking about like working whilst having the kids at home, and they were like, but you can't work full time and be a mum. That's when I was looking at that job, this job, which is full time, because I made a switch to doing full time. Although before I was doing 3 jobs and effectively still working full time. But yeah, so I think I found myself reflecting on all those different things, the places I've worked in where I've perhaps not felt valued by the amount I was paid, the feeling criticised for wanting to be ambitious and to work. And I think that's something that really shifted for me in terms of thinking, actually, it is okay to be ambitious. It's also okay to want to be able to afford a house, you know, and I'm not ashamed of the fact that I'm now trying to earn more money so that one day we get to buy a house. And yeah, that felt quite a big kind of shift for me, actually. And also in terms of, you know, if someone else says something else, then that's on them. Like, they don't get to put that on me, I think.
And you got the salary
I
that
did.
you wanted,
yeah,
which was fantastic.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
and I think something I've reflected on in that, and I've had conversations recently with people about stuff like this, is that I got the salary I wanted, and that was great, but it was also okay to still then think, but perhaps I'm ready for the next thing. And I think sometimes, again, this might happen in any role. I think it's easy for us to think it, but perhaps I've experienced it quite a bit in the charity sector of feeling like you're obliged to stay somewhere. Like the fact they gave me a pay rise meant that I should be committed there for a longer time, but actually you don't owe your workplace anything in that way, and actually, you know, it's right to seek new opportunities. And I think I've stayed in, not that role, but I've stayed in other roles for too long because I felt like I owed something.
And actually just doing a good job is enough, isn't it? That's what you owe them. That's what you give all the time.
And people staying places too long is not good for the person, but it's also not good for the organisation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I was thinking about how learning is such a theme for you, isn't it? And I've seen your commitment to learning. Yeah. And I remember you did want to put together a comms and marketing plan during the coaching time, and you put a lot of effort into training around that area. Yeah, I am super passionate about learning, and if I do coaching, I always like to do my homework and learn and make sure I come back to the next session so I can say, this is what I've learned. You were like my dream client. I just would love it. You know, we'd set you up on a task and you'd be so committed to it and really enthusiastic about it. I just felt like half the work was done. That was brilliant.
Yeah, because we used to say, what number are you at now and where do you want to be by the end of this? And it always felt like I'd shifted. But I think I reflect a lot on that now still. That probably is... I've always known I really loved learning, but I think because during our sessions, I really thought about what my values are and thought about how learning is such a big one. And it's definitely something I'm thinking about as I kind of think about what's my like future career progression as well, because there's the stats around how women will look at a job description and think they need to be qualified for all of it, and men might look at, think they can do half and they'll apply anyway. And I think we talked about that at the time. I've definitely felt that. But actually, I am so passionate about learning and so convinced that I will learn things I need to learn in a role. Actually, I would, if I was fully qualified to do a role, I'd probably find it a bit boring. Yes, that's a big part of me. I'm doing I don't know if I told you this, an ILM 7 qualification in strategic management and leadership currently. And I was looking at LinkedIn learning stuff. I'm a bit obsessed.
You are obsessed. And I can really see how it feeds into your career trajectory, because your career really has taken off exponentially in the last few years. And I think learning is such, the kind of keystone of that development, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So my role at the moment is deputy CEO, and I want to be a CEO. And I've sort of seen this has been a period of learning all of that stuff. I'm in an action learning set with other CEOs, which has been absolutely amazing for that learning space and just hearing people reflect on what their challenges are. And I feel like I've sort of had some really good stuff about the role that I want to step into. But actually what it is kind of confirmed to me is that I don't sit in that space thinking, I feel like a deputy, and I'm not. But actually I feel like I'm on ground where we can have really good conversations. And that's an amazing space for problem solving. And so we have a WhatsApp group where we share stuff as we go and say, help, I'm doing this. But we also meet, bring issues, and then all ask each other really good questions on that stuff. But the other amazing thing that's come out of that group is that sometimes someone will put a message in there and just say, I'm having a really bad day, this thing's going on. And I think someone once said, well, I'm about if you want to hop online and have a coffee and a cry. But it's become this thing now where someone will post and be like, is anyone around for a coffee and a cry this week? So it's an amazing thing, I think, in terms of learning from each other, but also just having your back in that space. And I think that's a really important thing, because you sometimes look, a bit like how we talked about how you see parenting, I think you look at the people who lead organisations and think they have it all together. And then I think the higher you go up in leadership, the more you're like, oh, wow, everyone is still just a human in this space, learning what they're doing, having days where they're just having a really bad day, and actually being able to be around them. I guess it's part of building that resilience and having those people there.
But that comes back to what we talked a few moments ago about the importance of community, doesn't it? And action learning sets are fantastic for that. I've run a lot of those in councils and in kind of big corporates, and then bringing business owners together as well. And they're really powerful spaces where if they're done well, then you can be vulnerable and you can share the difficult stuff, and you can support each other and challenge each other. I think they're enormously helpful. And I have something similar with a couple of other coaches who I met on my Henley Business School course years and years ago, and we get together every 6 weeks and we alternate between talking about our team coaching work, and then we do a bit of kind of life coaching for one another. And we quite often message each other and say, very similar to a coffee and a cry. It's like, help, I'm having a moment of doubt, or I just need a bit of input. And it just feels like somebody's just got their arm behind you, propping you up, which I think is fantastic. I'm trying to think about what else we talked about. I think there was definitely something about you growing in confidence in your own decision making, and I saw really palpable shifts over the coaching sessions as you became more, your own woman in terms of decision making. Yeah,
and I think we talked about that, about me feeling like what I should do and struggling to make decisions within that space. And I think my challenge in that, which I definitely can be I fall into that space, is my desire to get things right. So I think I was finding it really difficult to make a decision if I wasn't 100% sure that I was doing the right thing. Yeah, that's definitely something I think on now. I think the more that I've reflected on that, and the more that I've gone into jobs where I've just been a lot busier, if you don't make decisions, it's impossible to get anything done. And I've got so much to get done now that actually I do have to make some decisions a bit quicker. But I think the amazing thing now, the shift for me, is that I can think about how I equip the rest of my team to ask them what decision they might make on something as well. A lot of my confidence definitely grew in some of that. I think when we looked at my achievements and my love for learning and all of that sort of stuff, and I think I probably gained more confidence in making decisions and thinking I do know a lot of stuff, but also if I make a decision and then we have to change and do something else, then that's also fine. Yeah, and I think the thinking about worrying about doing what was right, some of that is right in whose eyes.
I often come back to the phrase, the tyranny of the should.
Yeah.
And when I first heard that blew my mind, because I think I kind of grew up always wanting to do things right, and I had slightly perfectionist tendencies, and they still come up a little bit, but not so much now. But when I heard that phrase, I was like, wow, like the shoulds, those senses of obligation can really rule you. But like you say, you know, who's saying that that's how you should do something? Yeah,
and I think the more probably a lot of that started then, but the more I sort of uncovered where lots of those shoulds come from, and lots of them are from me, but a lot of that is because of what I've learned that I think the world sees a woman as, or lots of different things. And I think when you start to unpick it and think that, and you think, well, I don't want any should that comes from a framework that sees men as more important, for example, and I thought about that a lot in terms of like parenting my kids and thinking about what decisions am I making based on those shoulds that actually I would be saying to them, don't, like, no one tells you should do that. That's been a real challenge for me of like thinking about my kind of the decisions I make and wanting to really like live a life of integrity. I feel like I have to be thinking about that for myself if I'm going to be teaching younger people on it. I think the other thing, because when we did coaching, I felt like I was at the point in my life and career where I was like really starting to figure out who I was and was like, okay, this is who I am, and I'm going to now pursue my career that fits in with that. And I think probably at that point, maybe it's because of the impact and it was the understanding my love of learning and understanding how much I want to have an impact made me realise how much I love change, because, and I don't know where the quote was from, but there was a quote about like I'm not going to remember it at all, right? But something about like you can't grow unless you change. So if you don't embrace change, you're never going to grow and learn. And so I think I was like, well, I'm going to have to love change. But I think change does make me tick, but actually to be able to like really know that those are a big part of me. And I've been in some work situations where I think where we've had to do quite a lot of change, and it's been quite challenging. But ultimately, wherever I work, I'm going to want to make sure that we're growing and learning as much as we can, and that's going to have change. So so I've gone on to think a lot about kind of change management and how do you do that. Yeah,
and we've done a whole piece of work on that, which is maybe the topic of another conversation. But I think one thing that strikes me is that you are a brilliant problem solver. You love a problem to unpick. You're also really committed to honesty. Yeah. And we had a moment actually after I've been doing a piece of work with you and your team, and I had mistakenly said something that attributed responsibility to somebody else in the team, and actually you had come up to me fairly soon after the event and mentioned that it was not correct what I had said, and that, you know, you just wanted to kind of get that, you know, straighten that out with me. And so I was kind of watching that ability to have conflict in action, and that was really interesting. And I mean, obviously nobody likes to be told that something they've said is wrong, but obviously, you know, I take that on the chin. And I really valued the fact that I just knew exactly where you stood, and we talked about it on the phone that evening and fixed it. And then I felt, okay, right, that's done now.
Yeah, it was. I felt like we committed to be honest with each other early on. It's really interesting because I definitely didn't used to like conflict, was not very good about talking about my emotions or kind of being honest about how I felt and stuff. And I think a lot of that's to do with how I was raised and conversations growing up. I think it's all tied again into, love of problem solving, but my love of learning and growing, because unless you're honest about those things, I don't see how you can move on and solve a problem. I think I've grown to, I don't know, I don't know if it's not like conflict. Well, I kind of do. I like it because it's for a purpose. But I think people can still find that quite difficult. I recently did the Luminous Spark profile.
I was just thinking about your Myers-Briggs profile actually as well, and how that fits with perhaps more ability to have conflict for the benefit of problem solving.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think it's one of those things I've probably had the ability to do, but I perhaps haven't used. But I think there's something in the Luminous Spark profile talked about how people might see me as someone who seeks out conflict. And I discussed with someone about, is that something I need to think about changing? I was like, actually, no, I just need to be really clear about why I might be seeking out conflict. Or if I have lots of people come into my office and talk about something that's going on, actually, I'd much rather say, let's all get in one room and talk about this and resolve it, because I don't want to be sitting in between. And partly because it's just really ineffective in terms of our time.
It's an enormous waste of time.
Yeah. But also because actually, if you can get in a space and talk about it now, that's going to help you to learn to do that more, and it'll help us to move on as an organisation. Yeah, it's interesting you said about the Myers-Briggs profile and my ability to do conflict. And I think, again, I probably started thinking about this when we were having coaching. I think I feel like I'm still on a bit of a journey. But as a leader, and whenever I do a personality profile, often I feel like I've got two sides to me, which is that love of community and my compassion and care for people. But actually also I'm really purposeful and driven. And I think it's taken me quite a long time. And a lot of that has been what people have given me feedback. And I think some of it is around how they think a woman in leadership should be. To actually see that those two sides of me are amazing things together, and I can be really logical and analytical, but I can also be really kind and compassionate. And it can feel quite hard personally sometimes to figure out how to put those two together, but that's all just different skills and tools I can learn. But actually that's now something I would celebrate about myself, but it's taken quite a long time to understand that. And also now I sit in a place where I think sometimes people are not going to like that that's my style, but actually, who cares? Yeah, and I'm not giving power to that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really powerful combination of personality traits, isn't it?
Yeah.
It obviously is working for you. Okay, so at this point, I am going to get you to pick a question out of the hat. So if you'd like to read it out, yeah.
Can you think of a metaphor to describe the before and after of the coaching experience itself? I think if you imagine a kind of grey, cloudy sky, but the sun is peeking through the clouds behind. So I think that's the before the coaching experience. And then the coaching is the process of those clouds gradually moving out of the way and actually being able to see the sun. Because I think what is amazing about coaching is that the whole purpose is to draw out something that's already in yourself. So it's like that sun that is actually behind the clouds, but the conversation enables you to do that and to access something that perhaps you weren't able to access without the questions that unlock it.
Yeah. I really like that. Thank you. So looking back at yourself right back at the beginning of our coaching work, if you had any words of wisdom for somebody who's in a similar situation, what might that be?
Well, the same as I said earlier, if you ever get the opportunity to have coaching, take it. And I think coaching is a space for you. So just go and be completely, honestly, authentically you. And if that means crying, cry. If it doesn't, whatever the issue is, just be honest about it and feel all the stuff that you need to feel about it. The number of coaching sessions where I've cried or just really felt something, but it's because I haven't allowed myself to find any space where I just think, how am I actually feeling about this thing? So I think seeing it as a space that you almost you're stepping into, where you've created a safe space to just properly feel and process the stuff that you need to.
I find it's really essential moments of reflection that we don't make space for, and there's nothing in our education system that encourages that either. I mean, I was brought up going to church, and it's not part of my life really anymore, but it probably did teach me something about reflection and stopping and pausing and thinking about how I feel or how I'm connected to something, and I'm really grateful that I've got that. Yeah. So, what's next for you?
I'm thinking about what's next in terms of my role. So I'm deputy CEO now, and I want to be a CEO. It's been really interesting experience, that whole thing of thinking I need to do everything I can to be fully qualified for that role, but actually, I'm going to properly start looking for kind of what's next and what that looks like. So I have just like in the last couple of weeks decided I'm going to start applying for CEO roles. But I'm at the point where I think I'm ready to move on to the next challenge and to learn more stuff. And it is that I think I will learn more somewhere else, and someone else can come into where I am and learn there. But that's definitely the next thing for me.
It's exciting. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I find it fascinating hearing your reflections, especially the piece around that question that was gifted by my dad and then on to you. So thank you for that. And perhaps we'll get you to come back and do a follow-up session at some future date.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I listened back to my conversation with Annie, I enjoyed hearing her hopeful metaphor that she came to coaching with a grey, cloudy sky and the sun peeking through, and that the coaching process gradually moved the clouds away to reveal the sun. As she says, coaching draws out something within the self, and the coaching lets you access this and unlocks or unsticks you. Her views on coaching that it's a purposeful conversation and it gives you tools to continue being purposeful after the coaching work finishes. I think that's important, that coaches seek to provide a sustainable tool that equips their clients for the next stage of their working life, long after the coaching work is complete. So just to remind you of Annie's coaching technique, which you might like to try out. She regularly asks herself these 3 questions. What impact am I currently having? What's missing? And what does the next 3 months look like? If you'd like to find out how we could work together, you can visit my website, www.lightingfires.co.uk, email me at julie@lightingfires.co.uk, or contact me on LinkedIn, Julie Williams, MSc. If you found this podcast helpful, please leave a 5-star rating so others just like you can find me and benefit from these stories. Thank you for listening to the Lighting Fires podcast. I'll be back soon with more conversations with my wonderful clients reflecting on their coaching journeys.